Brendon, Kleen, cold open question of the day. We are coming to you after Boston loses Game 4 of the series extended. And this brought to mind some comments or a tactic, let's say, we learned Joe Mazzula likes to use this week, where Jason Tatum, in his postgame pressers, talked about how he likes to show them clips of UFC fighters being choked out before games. He also has shown them clips of UFC fighters getting kicked in the below the waist and then either losing right after that because they didn't fight through the pain, or in the case of when Alex Pereira getting kicked and then immediately knocking his opponent out. So I just want to ask you, do you think Joe Mazzula, I know they lost this game, but considering they're probably going to win the NBA Finals, barring something historic, is Joe Mazzula just on to something, being a little weird? Maybe, or should we incorporate Joe Mazzula's motivation tactics into our podcasting is really what I'm wondering.
I'm not sure how we would. I'll leave that up to you.
Okay.
I'm open to ideas.
Okay.
I think that Mazzula has a quality that is hidden below all of that not so sarcastically does make him a good coach, which is that he's an insane person.
Yes.
It might manifest in some odd quotes, but you have to be kind of maniacally obsessed with this stuff to be great at it. And we kind of know that about players. Maybe we just assume coaches are just old guys who kind of draw some stuff on a whiteboard and it doesn't matter, but I think there's a very high level of obsession that happens with being a great coach as well, and he has that, and he seems to have always had it. Because remember, we laugh now. The last year collapse in the conference finals to the Heat was awful, but this is the guy Brad Stevens hand-selected when he went to the front office over all sorts of other guys. With Ime Udoka obviously having to leave, they said this assistant, not a search, not anyone else on the staff. This is our guy. So he showed something somewhere along the way. I think we're seeing it now.
No, I asked that in jest because I do think you're right, that there is just something absolutely right about like a coach having this kind of weirdness. And like it's kind of a tradition that the NBA Finals winning coach will have done something kind of off the wall. I believe Doc Rivers and Ty Lue have both like hidden money, like gotten guys to bring in like wads of cash, and then they like said, you get this back when we win. Like that was like a thing they did, and they used like actual money, getting their own money back as a motivator, no interest even on that money. But this is like just like the Joe Mazzula's a millennial, like this is like the millennial version of that, where he's like, I'm going to show you just obscene like mental warfare like stuff. It also speaks to, I think, I find, like these things are PR things more than anything else. But I love every time I see him, like the clips of him and Manchester City manager Pep Guardiola interacting, because like those two guys are two of like the energy they put out as head coaches of being just like obsessed with like the really random stuff and being very intense. Yeah, like did you see there's a photo of Pep talking to Mazzula before like game 1 in Boston when Pep was there, and there was like a meme going around. It's like Pep just going to try to get him to do inverted wings, and like then Pep's on the like court side, everyone else is like having a drink, enjoying things, and Pep looks like stressed out because he doesn't know how to relax in this environment. I imagine that's Joe Mazzula. He goes everywhere and he feels that exact same way, but you kind of have to be that to be this kind of coach, I think. And particularly for him, takes over Ime Udoka, he's coaching the Celtics, championship pressure in his first job, hand selected, to your point, by Brad Stevens. Like he almost had to be wired like this to get to where he is right now. So to his credit, it works for him and it works for the Celtics.
Yeah, I mean, X's and O's wise, like you hear some of these crazy coaches talk about, Spo went and spent time with Chip Kelly, that Dan Hurley clip that was going viral, that LeBron reacted to, that everybody was moving, sending around, sharing around again when they pursued him as the head coach. He's talking in that clip on JJ Redick's podcast about being inspired by Kyle Shanahan. I would love to hear somebody break down to me what they're installing from what I am watching Christian McCaffrey do to what Donovan Klingon was up to. It's beyond me, but if it works for them, they seem to have their own language here. So I'm just going to let them do their thing. And, we can laugh, but he's about to win a title. So there you go.
No, I mean, it's making me wonder if I should just watch like Dustin Poirier, like walkouts before, like, we record to get myself like amped up, or listen to like James Brown's The Boss, which is like just do something to get myself like ready to go and like attack a podcast with some kind of aggression is really what I'm doing here. I don't know. I'm gonna just take a tip from the school of Joe Mazzula. All right, coming up on today's show, react to Game 4. Talk about the Las Vegas Aces, the WNBA super team who's had an interesting start to the year, and Brendon just saw them in person in his backyard. And we're going to preview the offseason for a team that, let's call it, they had kind of a gap year in some ways, the Memphis Grizzlies. That's coming up today on the Just Basketball Show. Hey there, welcome in to the Just Basketball Show. I am Chris Manning. That is Brendon Kleen. If you haven't already, please subscribe, rate, and review on your podcast platform of choice. Hit subscribe on the Just Basketball Fans YouTube channel as well. You can check us on a TikTok, Instagram, and X. We're doing all kinds of great content over there. I just had a TikTok go up about Jaylen Brown and why his improvement, not Jason Tatum, since 2022 is really the driver of how Boston has got here more than anything else. So you can check that out and tons of other great stuff we're doing across social. I want to tell you that today's episode is brought to you by BetMGM. If you haven't signed up for BetMGM yet, use a bonus code JustBasketball and you'll get up to a $1,500 first bet offer on your first wager with BetMGM. Here's how it works. Step 1. It's easy. You download the BetMGM Sportsbook app on iOS or Android and sign up using code JustBasketball. Step 2, deposit at least $10 and place your first wager on any game. Step 3, you receive up to $1,500 back in bonus bets if the bet loses. Just make sure to use bonus code JustBasketball when you sign up. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Must be 21 or older to wager, and terms and conditions apply. Brendon, let's start with Game 4, a Dallas win. And I want to ask it this way, just about the Boston side of it. Their lowest scoring half, regular season or postseason of the Mazzula era. I wondered, I want to frame it this way. Dallas, I think, clearly came out with a point to prove, a sense of pride that I think was a different level of effort from Luka on down, more than anything else to me in this game. But it also felt like Boston maybe just closeout game, a little bit of maybe just a little jitters of that. Or you could look at it as, hey, like we're up 3-0, we can take our foot off the gas a little bit. It's like some version of those two things. I don't know, like it's hard to know from the outside what the mix of those two things are, how that kind of breaks down. But it's something of that. It doesn't really tell me this result that we are now headed to like a suddenly invigorated series again. But credit to Dallas for putting up a fight down 3-0, showing some real pride at home. But I mean, Boston obviously, I would favor them, I think, to win Game 5 even after this performance.
Yeah, it'll be at home again, and they've been the better team. I think, to me, this was about Luka, like you said. I think, maybe you attribute it to what Brian Windhorst said in the media cycle that ensued after all of that, just kind of lighting him up, lighting a fire underneath of him, and, that's probably what the narrative will be coming out of this game, heading into Monday's Game 5. But, to me, Luka, his best starts, the way that he's able to get the Mavs revving is to pick a weak point or a matchup on the opposing team, and if he can attack it, like get somebody switched on, execute a certain pick and roll, certain shot he's trying to get to, whatever it is, if he can get to it and obviously execute it, make the shot, get the ball to the player that he's trying to, whatever. That is what opens everything up. And that sounds complicated, or maybe I'm not doing a good job of explaining it, but today it was just shots at the rim, right? It was shots inside. It was, I'm going to, be more purposeful. They played pretty fast, I actually thought, in Game 3. They just, other things went wrong. They kept playing with a good pace. They got the switches they wanted. A lot of the time that was Horford. It was Tillman when he came in. They different guys in different lineups, and Luka, 16 of Dallas's first 19 points came at the basket. He didn't even make a three in this game. He didn't have to. It was the pull-up twos. It was the drives to the rim. It was getting to the free throw line, and he just was relentless with it. It opened everything else up. Kyrie had a great game. Some of their role players went off, and that was kind of it. You would have liked to see Boston have a punch to throw. They sort of did in that second quarter, but not really. And, finals games can sometimes go this way. Joe Mazzula puts his, full-on reserve bench lineup, not even fourth quarter. It's like 3-4 minutes left in the third. So, maybe ESPN's not too happy about all that, but who cares? Dallas takes the win. Boston will maybe get to have their trophy ceremony at home. But I think it was all Luka coming out with a mission, and he achieved it.
Yeah, 7 shots in a finals game for Shvi Mahalik is not something I had on my bingo card in the series, not a prop I had my eyes on at any point. But yeah, the Luka thing is, I think, the right place to start. He, even though he's 0 of 8 from 3, I didn't even look at that and think, he had an off game. It's it felt like to me the best Luka game of the series in a lot of ways, just because of the effort and the way he was getting to the rim, thinking about those shots, the amount of clean rolls.
It's really what he did in that first quarter, right? Even the final box score doesn't really tell you the full story, because if you look at the final box score, it looks a lot like what all the other games have been, but it was just landing that first punch more than anything. Yeah.
Yeah, and then you see throughout the game, it's that opens stuff up for Kyrie, who I thought had one of his more aggressive games of the series as well. You got clean rolls to the rim for Gafford. You got clean rolls to the rim for Lively, who was really energetic in his minutes in this game. And the other side of the Luka thing, Brendon, is I think defensively, this was the game where it's you could tell that the narrative or the discussion points and him fouling out in Game 3 did he hurt him. There's multiple times in this game where Luka is doing the thing that we rarely see him do, which is move his feet in a point where he could elect to, just ole, let the guy go, and or you just kind of hold his ground and hope he gets the offensive foul call, which is a thing a lot of stars do. But in this game, he's picking Drew Holiday's pocket. He's deflecting passes on the break. He's playing two-way engaged basketball in a way that I think it's his ultimate destiny at some point to have to do that at a higher degree. I think that's one of the lessons we may see, or a discussion point around him, of how does Luka, who we maybe think is the second best player in the world now, the best player in the world now after these playoffs, if there's another level for him to get to, if he's going to win a title, that's the kind of stuff he's going to need to do. And does it matter that much in a Game 4 where they're still going to be down 3-1 and aren't going to win these finals? No. But for him to do that was really telling. And it's you are capable of this to some degree. And you are, you have the smarts to do this. And we maybe always knew that, but he did it in some, the stuff he was doing was part of, I think, landing that punch that you're talking about.
For sure it was. I guess I would just say, to me, this was sort of the level pretty close to what we've seen him do this postseason. I don't think it really is some, new thing. I don't think
it felt fresh because it hadn't been there for a couple games, and whether that's tiredness, whether that's the injury, the pain, he's getting pain injections, whatever it is, it wasn't fully there the first couple games for whatever reason. And now it's
of course. And it's been a big problem. And I think, big picture, to me, part of why he has to do that, and maybe why I disagree slightly that it's something this level of defense we saw tonight is will have to become the norm for them to get over the hill. And honestly, why I wasn't fully sold on some of the conversation with Windhorst and others putting so much of the blame on him.
You mean when Brian Windhorst threw him in the air fryer and cooked that guy, straight up just fried him?
At midnight on cable television,
just at midnight. Luke had Luka for a midnight fucking snack, oof.
Great TV. Brian Windhorst is the GOAT. Fully earned after what happened. I just think the level to which the blame solely went on him is a little bit of an overreaction, because one, we've seen plenty of stars not play the level of defense that Luka did in that first half tonight and win a championship. So I don't think it's a prerequisite for him ever winning a title to be some kind of A+ defender. I think the roster construction is part of it. Kyrie Irving being your co-star and being a little bit undersized hurts you in that regard. I also think we spent a lot of time before the series, I think, almost convincing ourselves in the wrong direction of how this was all going to play out, to the point where it is surprising us that Boston is a bad matchup for Dallas, when I think that was sitting there the whole time. So, to me, Gafford not being able to do much of anything. He had some nice moments to open the third quarter. They posted him up a couple times. He got to the rim on a broken play that turned into kind of a pick and roll where he got to get to the free throw line. He had a steal on Tatum, so he had a nice stretch there, but has been largely unimpactful. The transition stuff has dried up, on and on. That, to me, all of those like structural disadvantages, especially against this Celtics team, that's why they're losing. It's also why Luka does have to play defense in this matchup and to beat this team in the finals, which he's probably not going to do now that they've gone down 3-0. So I don't fully think this is what he has to do, but in some future series, in some other makeup world of maybe they play a team that's built very much like them and normal 1 through 5, traditional centers, not a lot of size, Luka could probably get away with hiding out on some player. This team doesn't allow him to do that. So I think that kind of put him in a bad spot, to be honest with you. Like, what if last year Jokic ended up facing a team that spread him out and made him guard a bunch of pick and rolls and be out on the perimeter? We wouldn't have been like, wow, Jokic really played defense well enough to beat the Heat. It's like, no, they got a team they were better than that they matched up with, and they beat them. Like, great, But I don't know. I just think it went a little too far with Luka this week.
Yeah, I think that's all right, and I think that's fair. When you think about this game, anything you're spinning forward for the end of this game, a 122-84 Dallas win. No Porzingis, obviously he has this new injury. They said he was only going to play in special circumstances. Doesn't end up playing at all. Mm-hmm. And anything you're spinning forward for Game 5 when you look ahead to Monday that you're thinking about, that you're saying, okay, I'm keeping my eye on this, and that could maybe make Dallas extend it, take this back to Dallas for a Game 6.
Yeah, to me, the minutes with Dante Exum were really good. I think that felt sort of, easy for me to say obvious after he has a good game, but, a lot of people were wondering why abandon him, given that he was solid in the regular season. Jason Kidd tends to be a little quick with his rotation, so getting those good 14 minutes from Exum went a long way. I thought Kleba felt a little more stable and playable. They were playing him not at center, but at the 4. He made a big 3 kind of to really just put the finishing touches on the game. I guess the box score won't really tell you that he had a great night outside of the plus 25. Maybe that was just a blip. Boston plays a little harder, and he's scrambling just like he was in the first 3. But, if they could get good minutes again from Exum and Kleba, you start to feel a little better about them having the depth to keep up, especially if Porzingis can't play and Tillman keeps being uneven. You're starting to feel the recipe, but on the road, I know Boston can be a little tight at home sometimes. I just think they're going to put it away. What do you think?
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think them at home, I think this felt to me like the game where they're probably just a little nervy, a little just amped up. They're up 3-0. The thing that they've been grinding towards since 2022 and this whole season, this whole year has been about is staring them in the face. You get a little tense. You're up 3-0. You don't maybe need to push as hard in it. You just have a game like this. Like, that's just kind of what happens in basketball
sometimes. Was it even tension, or was it just it felt like they were just fine to lose? Yeah, legit. It felt like they were like, yeah, cool, whatever.
Yeah, I mean, we're gonna look back at the box score of this game, and it's just gonna be like a weird box score. You're gonna be like, there was a finals game where Peyton Pritchard took the most shots on the Celtics in a finals game in a series they won. Like, you're just gonna be like, sure, 14 shots in 21 minutes for Peyton Pritchard. Like, amazing. Yeah,
stuff, I saw people comparing it to Game 4 of the 2017 finals. Similar, right? Where it's like a team's just lets their foot off the gas, and just we all kind of know what's coming, but it just goes that way for a night, and we all kind of laugh and move on. And I don't know if there's much more to it than that. Yeah, I will say, because we're not going to talk. We might not talk about him again, and he's not a major factor in this team. Cool to see Dante Exum on the stage. I will just say, really interesting career arc for him. Obviously, comes into the league, has a good rookie year, has the knee injury, is really injury plagued the rest of his time in the league. Bounces around a little bit, is in Cleveland, plays 30 games over like a year and a half there, and then goes overseas for 2 years and really reinvents himself, and then comes back and is now like a good rotation guy on a finals team. Like, a really cool story for a guy that like we could have forgotten about. So cool to see him back on the stage, even if it's not going to result in a ring. But the fact that he's back and on like a good team and a good like playoff caliber role guy. Like, Dallas has done, like, if anything, they should feel pretty, and they might have to hit some of these singles and
stuff again and get lucky on some of the stuff again and finding a Derek Jones on the cheap and finding a Don Dixon on the cheap. But like they did a really good job, at least in finding some of these guys to give them some options in the rotation this year. And Exum's, it's cool to see him at least on that stage as someone who's had a up and down career and really been through some stuff and had nothing. I mean,
we better talk about him again. He should play on Monday. So
he should play on Monday, and they should bring him back too. I don't know what his contract is, but he should be back.
He's a free agent, so like you were just saying,
24-25. He's got a 3.1. It's not guaranteed, but only 3.1 million next year. That feels like you should get. That's like for him.
Oh, I thought it was a player option. Yeah, you're right. So there you go. Yeah, he'll be back. Yeah. Derek Jones is who I was thinking is for sure hitting the market again. So they'll have to try to fend off some.
Someone's going to overpay Derek Jones is my guess.
Sure. So yeah. But Exum should play Monday. He's been playing well for them all year. Not really sure why it took this long to get legit minutes in the rotation in the finals, but good player.
Yeah. All right. We'll talk about Game 5 next week, but let's move on to the WNBA and let's talk about the Las Vegas Aces. Brendon, you just saw them in person, so let's start there. What stood out to you seeing them live and in living color against the Phoenix Mercury?
Yeah, I mean, this is a team we've watched for a long time, but I think just observations from being there is that A'ja Wilson, the approach, the focus, the mental toughness, she just kind of like she carries herself on the court like the best player in the league, if that makes any sense, in a way that doesn't always happen for everybody. I don't, maybe, LeBron at his peak, you probably felt that about. Maybe there were some Steph seasons you could say that about. WNBA-wise, I've gotten to watch Diana Taurasi when she was at her peak, and honestly still pretty much handles herself that way. But it's just, it's something to behold. It's just the relentlessness of it with A'ja. Chris, she's averaging career bests in points per game, rebounds per game, free throw attempts per game, blocks per game, steals per game, offensive rebound rate, assist rate, and turnover rate.
She's really good. She's really fucking good.
And this is a player who's already won 2 MVP awards and is the reigning back-to-back champion and finals MVP. And somehow I just listed off all that shit she's doing better than she ever has. It's historic right now what she's doing. So it was cool to get to see her. She scored 30+. She's at 8 straight with 25 or more, I believe. Just on another level. Just putting this team on her back and trying to will them to a postseason to try to defend their title again.
Yeah, I think you look at them. They've lost 3 in a row for the first time since 2019.
Before last night when they beat the Mercury.
Before last night, right. And you look at that and you say, okay, is there like a reason to worry about this? And then you think, okay, they don't have Chelsea Gray right now. Like, she's not played. I also just have such implicit trust in this entire team that I just that doesn't really freak me out in a way it would if this was like the Liberty even or if the Sun, who've been awesome this year, kind of went in that direction and lost 3 in a row or something like that. Like, this doesn't worry me, even if they are not humming right now. Because of A'ja Wilson, I think, setting that tone, and because you expect post-Olympics, assuming health, Chelsea Gray's back and just gives them something. There's a really good Kelsey Plum quote about Chelsea Gray where she basically just said, it's like if you bake a cake. She credited this analogy to Becky Hammon and prefaced it by saying it's not an excuse. But when you bake a cake or make anything really, and you take the main ingredient like Chelsea Gray out of the equation, the food just tastes different. They're just some schematic things that are different, and I think people are regarding it differently because you're not there. I think you feel that, and I think even with Kelsey Plum being what she is, with A'ja Wilson being what she is, with Jack Young being what she is, it's like you just missed that big piece, and we talked about this last year. It's one of the reasons to be slightly skeptical of them. It's like this team is insanely top-heavy, so you take one really important piece out of that, and it's like it's going to feel different. Like, it just is, and there's not really a way around that. There's no way to replace Chelsea Gray. I think they've done a good job of trying to fill in that way. Asia's been awesome. I think finding Kate Martin, frankly, which we can talk about her if you want, as a 20-minute-a-game rookie that didn't even have an agent coming into the draft, has been a nice coup for them just to find a rookie who can at least try and give effort and do some stuff on the floor for them. And they seem to have really embraced her in a really positive way as a rookie, which is nice to see, considering other things going on. But like I don't really, even with like the 3-loss thing, and even with like things not totally feeling right because of Asia and everything you said, like you just would expect this to ultimately, like, there'll be like the 2 seed maybe in the West because of how this has started, and I would still think, oh, they're probably like my favorite to
West.
like, yeah, like they'll get out of there, they'll be like the second best team in the league record wise or something, and it's like, okay, I probably still think they're gonna win it all anyway because they're the Las Vegas Aces.
Yeah, I feel like they win 1 game 4 on the road against the Liberty, and they're like, I don't know, what even is the comp, like prime Roger Federer or something? Like, we talked about this when we were doing our preview. Like, they're
Nadal on clay. Like,
sure, they're not like unbeatable. Are they going to win every championship for the rest of time? I mean, I think they have credible threats here. I mean, I think the Liberty have acquitted themselves very well. The Liberty are clearly the better team right now if you just take a snapshot of the league. And I think while they've managed decently without Chelsea Gray and also Kirsten Bell, who's been hurt, who was somebody we all kind of expected to take a step forward and get a bigger role this season with Candace Parker gone and everything else, I don't, I think Plum is the place to look where it's not going well. She's at a 49.1% true shooting, 33% from deep right now. I think the fact that she can't play off of, like, Jackie Young, this 3 ball handler thing has been their strength for the whole time they've had them all. But Jackie Young can kind of create on her own. Like, against the Mercury on Thursday night, she set a career high for points, but also for threes, and she was just bombing away on pull-up threes. She can just kind of like what's the bullet bill in Mario? She's kind of like that. Driving to the basket. She's just stronger than everybody, and she can create out of nothing. Whereas Plum, because she's a little shorter and a little bit more reliant on space and flow and everything else, I think she's the one you could easily see suffering because of Gray not being there, but also just them not being able to play quite as fast without Chelsea Gray, I think, has been a problem for everybody, but for Gray's, or for Plum more maybe than anyone else. But the real issue and the real thing that I think is concerning more than even that stuff is they're still second on offense.
Yeah.
Even with all that said, they're 8th on defense.
Yeah, the defense
in the league right now. And 2 years ago when they made the finals and won their first championship, they were middle of the pack defensively in the W. Last year, without Candace Parker, that number suffered again. And Kia Stokes is inconsistent. Kate Martin, great story. Her helping them get through this stretch will be nice. Sydney Colson has been serviceable enough, as she always is. Tiffany Hayes was retired and then all of a sudden is playing for this team. But I don't look at this roster and see a team that's going to consistently get stops in its current form. That does worry me. And you're not catching the Liberty in year 1 with their own depth concerns like you did last season. Not to mention the Sun or any number of the Lynx, the Storm, whoever, that have also surprised. The league is deeper. Their defense is still an issue. And, yes, Gray could come back, but then is she getting into shape and what is going on there? And are they struggling to get into gear? And what's the rotation look? I don't think this team is just an impenetrable force that's going to stomp its way to a championship. I mean, 3 in a row, like that's basically never happened. So I think you'd be kind of crazy to just chalk that in.
Yeah, I don't think when I say I think it's going to be fine, I don't think it's like going to be like they just steamroll to a championship. I mean, it's like I think they're going to be like competitive no matter like what happens. Is sort of like my point. It's like I don't think they're just going to like not be in that conversation. Just your point. It's like with Kelsey Plum,
I mean, they're 6-5, so they've weathered it.
Right, and like with Kelsey Plum, to your point, she's playing more minutes than she ever has, or she's taking more shots per game than she ever has. 17.2 a game, up from 13.4 last year. Taking nearly over 3 more threes per game. Volume's just up and the efficiency has cratered. And I think to your point, like all that makes sense. And you look at the defense paired with the Lynx, who can go at them, and Nafessa Collier is playing, I think, like should be in the MVP conversation. Like she's been that good. Better offense than them. Sun, better offense than them. Storm, offense looks really good. Like all of these teams just have something that can actually push them on top of the Liberty, who like maybe in retrospect, like that finals was like I think we looked at that finals as like last year in some ways, Brendon, like the Aces kind of asserting that last season was about them, and like that there was like a gap. That's kind of how it felt in real time to me. Maybe that was like the learning curve, and the gap wasn't as big as we thought in retrospect, because that was like first year of that team. Aces have been together a little bit longer. Like maybe this.
I mean,
is
how
just
was the gap big? That's what I'm saying. I feel like you're it's a little bit of revisionist history. The Liberty beat them in the Commissioner's Cup final. All the games were close, and they just fell apart in the fourth game.
And my Liberty fan brain might have been entirely on. Is also my point. Like my Liberty fan brain.
I just don't think it was a gap. I think that it's the finals. Somebody wins. It's like were the Cavs this huge killer against the Warriors in 2016? No, they just beat them in the finals. Like I think that just happened. So I think it was embarrassing that it happened with Kia Stokes out and Chelsea Gray out, and players like one of which is not even in the league anymore, stepping up last year to help the Aces do that on the road in a series we all assume was just bound to go 5. Like that emotionally sucked. Of course. But I don't think the gap in talent, the gap in success, the gap in anything was really that significant last year. So, yes, you trust the chemistry, the cohesion, the been there before of it all with the Aces. I do think that matters. I would never understate that. But I also think a name we haven't said that I'm not positive is just going to be great forever is Alicia Clark, who is 36 years old, has had a major injury that she bounced back from nicely, but she's shooting 43%. It feels like she can just make open threes. She could play until she's 56, and that number might still be in the 40s, but that they're asking a lot of her, playing over 31 minutes a night. A player that was a deeper bench player for them last year, but because of the sequence of all these injuries now and Parker leaving and everything else, she's now starting, and they need her to be good every night. And so it does add up. And I think it almost speaks to that. It's great to have Asia and have her be able to step up, but it's kind of crazy that she's having to put up that much more volume, more even than multiple MVP seasons, just to get them to 6 and 5. And to me that is bigger than just Chelsea Gray being hurt. It shouldn't be this much of an issue just because you miss one player. Great player, amazing player, head of the tip of the spear, point guard, all that, but I think they have a lot of concerns. And the thing that sucks is like WNBA midseason trades, because of the cap and everything, don't really happen. Like they kind of just gotta figure this out and get some in-season improvement, and maybe the rest of the break, although all their best players are going to Paris.
That's the point.
Like, what are you gonna do?
Yeah, they are like, even if the Chelsea Gray like coming back thing doesn't solve everything, her getting in a rhythm at the Olympics would do them a big solid. Like if she can look good at the Olympics, because you're gonna have to play an important role in that Team USA roster. Like that's kind of an important thing for them, but it's not something they can at all control. Like they have to kind of hope it like breaks in their favor in a real way, which is tough. Title odds right now via BetMGM. Aces are still the favorites at plus 115. Liberty are plus 175. Sun are plus 700. Lynx are plus 1,200. The Storm are plus 1,300. Then you drop down to the Mercury at plus 3,500.
Yeah, those Sun odds are pretty nice considering they're the best team in the league so far, basically.
I really like that team a lot. I watch them and I'm just like, I love the identity of this team. They're tough as shit. The defense really good. Alyssa Thomas is just incredible. Like, they don't back down from any kind of scrap. Like, I really, really like that team. Wouldn't shock me if this is the year they kind of like put it all together and figure it out.
They're healthy. I mean, their starting center was out last year. Brianna Jones, she's back. So if she's in there and they continue to get, their defense is just with losing, like they lost Rebecca Allen, who's in Phoenix now, and they just keep getting closer to a defensive identity, and yet their offense is able to just cobble together. And maybe that's the way you beat some of these super teams, is you just lock down on that end of the floor and have that be your clear strength and advantage every night. And you win a bunch of like 62-60 games that a bunch of basketball sickos are the only ones who are actually entertained by. And maybe that's what we're headed for in October. I don't know. But yeah, the point is the league's deeper for sure. This is not a season where we're just headed toward Aces Liberty. There's 6 teams that have a real shot at it, I think.
Yeah, Stephanie White, good coach. Let me ask you one other thing, Brennan, about your and the Mercury in your background. How has Brittany Griner look since she's come back and actually been able to get on the court this year? What has that been like?
Well, I think, she had the toe injury. She was actually weirdly statistically fine last year, even though if you watched her, it didn't look like it. And then this season, 25-9. Or this past game, 25-9. This was really her breakout, I think, of the season. Looked like the old BG, and they went small with Asia at the 5 to close the game, as they most often do. She couldn't do anything. I mean, she's given up a lot of height, obviously, but still, that's the reigning 2-time Defensive Player of the Year. Asia can typically make up for being a little smaller than certain players she's guarding and figure it out, and that did not happen in this case. So I think that's a really good sign that it's another weapon for the Mercury, who have really, really high highs and really low lows this year. I don't fully buy them as a championship contender until they get a little bit of their feet underneath of them, but maybe they'll peak late and be a threat. You never know, but having Griner be Griner is, she's probably the best player on the team if she can keep playing like this, so makes them a much more dominant group for sure.
Yeah. All right, we'll check it on the WNBA more as we go. I agree with Brennan. This is an open title race. Even like the Lynx, Brennan, at like 1,200 and like the Storm at plus 1,300. I look at that and I'm like, that's not crazy to me. Like those teams like being in the finals. And then if you're in the finals, you have a chance to win the finals. If you get there, you have a chance. Like, would not shock me if one of those teams puts together a run and gets there. This feels like we're headed towards something very exciting post-Olympics. Do you hope we get Aces Liberty at some point again, though? Just for, like, the Stewie Asia part of it, just, like, that part of it, I do want to see that again.
Well, they're playing their first regular season game Saturday, so we can definitely catch up on that next week.
Yeah, we 100% will be. I just built my Saturday in part around that. All right, let's move on. Off-season preview time. The Memphis Grizzlies. Brendon, can I ask, is this maybe the weirdest season of any NBA team last year just because of everything that happened and how it kind of forced them to kind of like have a year where I don't know how you take very much of anything from it? Like, if you're them, and I know there's some coaching stuff on the assistant staff they've changed, and they made some trades, and you can take something away from them. You still have ideas about what you do with a team that has John Moran as the focal point of your franchise, and Jaren Jackson Jr. is your number 2, and all of that. And you still have Marcus Smart around, all of these things. You have ideas, I think, of what you'd want to do that are pretty logical. But such a weird year, considering, like, I don't know if there's anything in the data or the film you can really take and say, this is what we need. And, like, it's like a clear thing you can base off last year. Kind of has to go off kind of like what you think of the archetype of this team and kind of build off of that, because you didn't really get to see any of this come together last year. And that makes this such an interesting team for this offseason.
I mean, I think you do know, because they quietly, despite all the injuries and pretty much having a lost season as far as win-loss and competing for a championship goes, they have more chemistry in a longer longevity, I know that's not a word, core than anybody, pretty much, outside of like Denver. So, your team is Ja, Bane, and Jaren. I think Bane in particular, who we hyped up a lot throughout the regular season, took a huge step forward. That was only year 4 for him, so it makes sense. And really, it's just filling in around those guys like it always has been. You didn't get to see what Marcus Smart looked like next to anybody, because he had a lost season, which is probably the biggest disappointment outside of obviously Ja, who just torpedoed the season. But not trading for Smart, having him be the thing we were waiting so long for them to go get, and then just having a whole year lost without any data or evidence about him, that sucks. But on the plus side, I think the most Grizzlies fans probably feel like last year, when it was all said and done, it was about getting Vince Williams and Gigi Jackson as legit rotation players going forward. So, frankly, obviously Boston's not going to care about not discovering rotation players if they walk away with the championship, but it's not a lot of teams who can go through a season and say we drafted and developed and found diamond in the rough guys to fill 2 rotation spots on cheap salaries. So honestly, I feel really good about Memphis heading into next season. I think they're going to be right back up there as a championship contender. I mean, why not? They were up there before. They could be deeper now. They're a little more older and experienced. Bane took a huge step forward. Why could they not compete for a championship? This was a top 4 seed every year as long as Ja's been healthy since he broke out that first year they were an 8 seed. So you add 2 more rotation guys on the wing, like, sign me up.
The part of I think I find most interesting too is that I think there should be urgency for them right now. Ja's 25, Desmond Bane's 26, Jaren's 25. It's not like they are running out of time, but because they've been, to your point, they've been together for a little bit, because the expense is starting to kick in a little bit, you kind of got to start making some moves. And what they do and how aggressive they are, I think it's time to maybe be aggressive and throw some stuff around and be a little bit bold. And I wonder how aggressive they decide to be. Even with the draft, I look at that as that's the first domino that's going to fall. What it would cost, I don't know. But, like, to me, them trading up for Kleen is just, like, the most obvious thing I want a team to do in this draft. That is a guy that even if – I understand, like, if you're Kleen, maybe you'd want to go somewhere where you could be a more featured part of, like, a team's build, like Charlotte. You know, for instance, you would be, like, a clear part of, like, whatever they're going to build there and whatever's going to happen, start, and be a focal point of a franchise. More opportunity for money down the line, perhaps, as well. Like, so I understand, like, there's part of that agent's direct stuff, all that. But if I'm Memphis, I look at that guy who's, like, really smart, maybe potential to do some shooting, can play next to Jaren, can maybe fill this long-term need to have another center on your roster. Maybe you feel confident enough to find a way to use Brandon Clark's salary in a trade if you want to get a little weird and be a little more aggressive in that way. Like, that to me just makes sense as go get a guy who's clearly, I think, going to have a high floor and be pretty good, cost control contract, cash in some chips, and then fill like a real need on your roster that I think is staring them in the face, which is to get another big post the Steven Adams trade.
Yeah, agreed. That is a need. I wouldn't trust Clark coming off of an injury. An
Achilles injury at that.
Yeah, I also won't pretend to know all the details, but the fact that it seemed like he could have played and didn't just felt odd to me. Just, is everything good? Did something go weird with the recovery? I don't know, but that you don't normally see that, you know, like Paul George came back and played 4 games that one year after he shattered his leg. Like, guys just tend to, okay, I'm healthy, I'm here, let's go. And there was the strangeness about Clark may play, could play, won't play, whatever. I don't know. So it doesn't feel like that's just what you're going to say. That's our 25-minute per game center this year, starting backup, whatever. But because Jaren can play the 5, Kleen would be awesome. Of course, if they had a chance to get him, great. You know, you mentioned Charlotte. I don't think he's fallen to 6, so you're going to have to go higher than even that to go get this guy, given we've already heard rumors about him at first overall, right?
I'm just gonna say this again now. I'm going to be, when we do our draft recap show, if Houston takes him at 3, I'm gonna F. Just let's Sengun Cook. Just getting that on the record now. Just saying that again. Said it twice.
Yeah, the rumors with that are also, I mean, forget Sengun, to be honest. You know, I agree there, but also that you mentioned the Steven Adams trade. That's who traded for him. So
yeah,
what are we doing? But anyway, Kleen would be great, obviously. But I look at the lottery, and there's guys like Khalil Ware, Day'Ron Holmes. I know not all those players we think of as the 9th overall prospect, whatever. There are centers here to be had, is the point. And even if it's not Kleen, I think that is a goal of theirs. Big picture, so they have Luke Kennard on this team option.
$14.7 million.
Mm-hmm. And they have to decide on that by the 29th, so after the draft, but you know, they can make their intentions known before the draft, of course. I also look at their overall financial situation, which is that they are about a little shy of $500,000 over the tax line to be in that first apron as of now. That's with Kennard on their team, and you know, you mentioned Clark being a salary they could potentially move. My goal, if possible, I know the money's not mine, we can do all that with the ownership, but being realistic, there is a little bit of uncertainty with Smart, with Ja coming back from injury again, with are Gigi and Vince Williams real, all that stuff that I don't fully want to pay the tax if I can avoid it, because you're getting into repeater territory and the limitations of the apron and all that stuff. So can I improve the team and get under that tax line? That's
hold off a year on the tax, so it's like you get like you proof of concept this year, and then a year from now maybe you throw some gasoline on the fire, and then you're really off and running.
Exactly, because you mentioned the timeline of their stars. The other thing, aside from them just having been together and being in their prime, and you just want to kind of do with that what you can, is they're all on their second contracts already, and they're all on maxes. Well, Jaren's on his third contract, right? Technically,
yeah,
we got some kind of extension, so it's getting expensive at the same time. So that's kind of the other thing, is like you're not going to get any relief anytime soon. So the fact that you have your books worked in a way, but what's funny is you say that, and then their needs to me are more shooting and big man depth. So really the question is, if you do want to improve, which I think we agree they kind of still have to, and you're worried about the tax, it's like, well, can you actually get players better than Kennard or Clark? Because those two guys are also at your positions of need. So it's a little bit of a strange spot to be in, where you have the players, you kind of have a depth chart already. I wrote it out. I got to 9 guys I feel really good about. They could just roll into the season, have Clark be their other center, Kennard's kind of their last guard off the bench shooter, and they could just go there and maybe wait to the deadline to make an improvement. But they have a lot of options. I guess it's just about how can they kind of strike while the iron's hot. And like you said, what does the draft provide? They also have the 39th pick, which could be a player too.
The other thing I would look at too, if I'm them, is I would still feel the need to just get like a little bit bigger on the wing. Even if you look at the depth chart and you feel good about some of this, if you're 4 guards, perimeter guys, you're relying on Morant, Bane, Kennard, and Smart. Even if Smart, we think of who defends up, all that stuff, like that does skew smaller. That does skew a little bit like light in a way that I would want to try to find something a little bit bigger. There's a reason that they were one of the teams that that apparently offered a ton of first-round picks for Mikal Bridges, one of many teams that have done that over the years.
Before the Smart trade, though. See, I just think he's their guy,
Yeah. Which, like, I get why they do that. I think, like, there is something to that. But, like, if you could exchange Kennard for someone slightly bigger at that same, roughly the same number, even if you have to pay a little bit more and you could find a way to deduct the tax another way, I think that to me would make a lot of sense. Like, could you, like Laravia, like maybe, or if maybe not Laravia is not the right answer, but if there's like another salary, is Conchar matter to you that much? Could you dump him somewhere else and do that and deduct the tax that way? Like, can you do little things on the edges but make a slight improvement to get a little more size in one of these other spots? Looking at, but the tricky part with that is that if you wanted to get bigger there, that's the thing everyone kind of wants and needs. That's really expensive, right? Like that's the thing that the cost goes up for. That's kind of the inherent problem here.
Yeah, I think with Kennard or Clark, if you're trading those guys and trying to get something better than them, you're having to give up quite a bit, because I don't think Kennard on a team option like that's nothing. That's just a salary slot. Nobody's valuing Kennard on an expiring contract by that point. It's
basically the mid-level. It's like it's basically the mid-level essentially.
Yeah, I just mean from the receiving team standpoint, that's not value. So you're having to give everything you're giving in value is your own players, your own picks, whatever, to improve that spot. So, and same with Clark because of the injuries and everything else. I don't think you're gonna say Clark and 39 and we got this great new toy to play with. You're probably having to give up future first and all that sort of stuff, which you don't want to do. So, to me, I like kind of doing the exercise and thought experiment in my head. I don't know, unless they include 9 in a trade, I don't know what's there for them with either of those two players. And I think the question becomes, is something interesting enough to them to get more size, like you said, or a little more shooting to trade Smart? And just say, we tried it, whatever, last year was weird, but this is our only pathway to a major improvement, so we're just going to roll it, keep it rolling, and Smart's really never going to get time with our core guys, and so be it. And that might be their only real pathway to getting a real difference maker. Probably not as good as Mikal Bridges, but I looked at to Brooklyn for Dorian Finney-Smith, who they've been connected to in the past as well. Maybe you get something else from Brooklyn too. In a trade like that, and you give up Smart and whatever else. and you get more of what you need, that might be their only pathway, because I don't think you want to give up those young wing guys we talked about. And like I said, the rest of the players are not very valuable to other teams.
And even like this free agency class, it's not like there's like an under the radar veteran that I'm like excited about trying to nab if I'm them. You know what I mean? It's like Jetty Osman on a cheap contract. It's like, Royce O'Neal like on a minimum. Like Gary Harris like on a cheap deal would be like okay, but is that like really needle moving for you based on the guys you have? I don't think any of these guys are demonstrably better or significantly different than what you already kind of have in house. To your point, and I also like even if there is going to be some ups and downs with Jackson. And with Vince Williams, more so with Jackson because he is still incredibly young.
He's 20, yeah.
He's 20. Like, I want those guys to play. I want those guys to get the reps because, like, that's how it's going to pay off for them in a year, 2 years, 3 years. When, Ja's 28, Jackson's 28, Bane's 29 or whatever, and those guys are okay. Like, then they're in their primes, and those guys have had the experience. And also, frankly, you get more information on when you have to pay them. Because like those you also have to be thinking about that stuff down the line too, and balancing the books like 3 years from now. That's the whole like balancing act teams are going to be running in this apron era. So it's really tricky. I think that's like part of the reason why I think if I'm them, I don't even want to consider trading the pick, because I think even if whatever you think about this draft, then they'll have their own read on it. Obviously, I would want to like take someone because I would want the cost control. Like part of the reason I think I'm okay for them, because you even whether it's Kleen, whether it's another center, whether it's one of the wings, I want the cost control and the opportunity to frankly make up for some of the misses on the draft they've had the last several years, whether it's Roddy, whether it's Kenneth Lofton, any of the other misses they've had.
Do you know what team David Roddy plays for?
The Phoenix Suns.
Nice.
Brendon,
Just very random. So I figured I'd throw that at you and see if you remembered.
Brendon, I was a David Roddy like obsessive when he came into the draft. I was like the frame, the weirdness of his game. I was like really in on David Roddy. I couldn't tell you why. There's something about him that I really, really liked, and it just hasn't really worked.
No. So yeah, I hear you, and I think that's probably the smartest thing to do. I mean, I think there is an advantage to the teams in the range of like Memphis, Houston, of course, but Memphis, Oklahoma City, even Chicago, Sacramento, and then Miami, kind of to round out that lottery area, is just snap up whatever falls. And you're probably going to get a pretty decent shot at somebody who might be a little older, might be closer to a finished product. The other two centers I mentioned, Devin Carter, there's players like that who I think, could contribute right away. So Memphis could really benefit from that as well. And maybe, would it be crazy if somebody they draft at 9, even if it's not one of the top names we're all hyped up about now, if it's somebody more in that middle tier, ends up being better than Kennard or Clark or G.G. Jackson next year? No, that wouldn't be crazy at all. That could easily be what happens here to give them that additional rotation piece that, again, I think we're in agreement. They're kind of 1-2 pieces away, but, the Thunder got Kassan Wallace, Derek Lively. We've been talking about those guys all season for a reason. If Memphis can be the team to kind of do that, easier said than done, but maybe that's their approach, and they just really like somebody at 9, and that becomes their 8th man, and they get better that way. So that's the other thing they got out of this season from hell is the 9th overall pick, so that helps too.
The last thing I think we should hit on is Ja, because didn't really see him last year. A lost season due to off-court stuff, due to the injury. What he comes back looking like health-wise, mentality-wise, like where he comes out of the summer and last year, what he comes looking like, I think that's maybe more important than anything we talked about, because that's the guy who drives this franchise. More than anyone else, more than Taylor Jenkins, who's a very good coach, more than Jaren, because we kind of know what Jaren's limitations are at the top end of things, more than Bane, who's really good and I really like, but Ja's the engine of this team. Ja's the face of this franchise. And where he ends up after everything that has gone on the last year and a half, all the noise, all the injury, like whatever, bad or good, whatever you want to say, where he comes out of this, Brendon, to me, and like what kind of player this next phase career look like, that's probably more important than any of this. Because like the ceiling they could reach, if they are going to be a title contender, none of it matters if Ja is not hitting another level and kind of hitting whatever his potential ultimately is.
Yeah, do you think where would you look if I were to come back in time from 2027 and I said Ja Morant got 10% better? Where would that come from?
I don't think it's defensively because he's just too small. Like I think that's always going to kind of be the thing. Mm-hmm. I want to pull up what his numbers are because I can't tell you off the top of my head. But like I'd want to say like pull up 3-point shooting would be the thing. Like if that like he had to stop and
yeah, that'd be
like,
great.
that's
but that's a tough skill. I don't know.
But that's like the half court thing with him, right? That would like really like diversify his. Like I'm trying to think of how to diversify.
I mean, John Morant with a
Ja
consistent
does.
pull up three is an MVP. So
That's kind of like the thing. It's like he's kind of already like. I don't mean to be like kind of like glib about it, but it's like.
yeah.
But like Brendon, it's like that's kind of like the where he got in terms of like how the energy around him, in terms of the excitement around him. It's like kind of like that's like the part of his game that just didn't feel like it was totally like there on the offense.
Yeah,
like I felt like the
for
package
sure.
on him was in there in a lot of ways to me.
But it doesn't mean he's necessarily going to add it, right? I guess
know,
where
but
I'm
it's
going
like-
is like I think
Yeah.
he may be somewhat of a finished product, because
Yeah.
of the limitations of his frame. Like, I think some guys that are so polished so early, like especially if their size limits them, unless it, like you're saying, unless it is the shooting, there's not really a bunch of additional layers to what they're really going to be able to do. Like Kyrie Irving is a good example of somebody like once Kyrie hit a point, he's been that. And that's an all NBA caliber guy, but
yeah.
Kyrie didn't
And
and then he did that. It's just no, he was there and he stayed there and he's gonna go to the Hall of Fame. So great, and I think Ja's on that track too. But I don't know, age 25 season, are we gonna see a leap? Or that's why I was so excited to see what Bane did. Frankly, like Bane to me, I think his season got overlooked. Like the guy shot nine threes a game, 38%, 5.5 assists per game. Upped his free throw attempts per game, scored 24 points per game, and he's not an amazing defender, but he has length, and he's already a little older. He's basically the same. He's older than Ja, so you just kind of you're not worried about him. He's exploitable, like you said. They're small in the backcourt, but that's where I think the team's overall, half court, whatever, their offensive ceiling can go up is him and their partnership. So I want to see that. That's I guess the part of Ja coming back is how does it mesh now that Bane took this huge leap. That's where I want to see how Ja's game changes. It's not to me like him getting this extra level. It's can he do a lot, be as impactful and valuable and important as he was to them when it was just his show, and share some of that responsibility with a bona fide co-star that he has now versus just this sharpshooter guy who would, come off screens and get some threes up, which is kind of what he was before last season.
And what does slightly more off-ball Ja even look like? We don't really know. Very low volume catch and shoot 3-point guy for his career. I think there's opportunity for him to be a really dynamic cutter. But it's pretty rare for a guy like him to want to cut.
Exactly. Yeah, so is Russ, right? How long was he going to say that one for?
Yeah, it took until he got to the Clippers to really want to do any of that.
Took until he was a minimum player on his way out of the league potentially to finally embrace that. So yeah, but look, it's not even I don't criticize it. I get it.
No,
it's
just
you've been
like a
doing
way,
this your
like,
whole
this
life. Do you want to go stand over
Yeah.
there and sprint toward the basket and hope you get the ball? Like, you want me to do what?
Yeah. The only player who has ever willingly and this is part of his brilliance, that has ever willingly used a bunch of energy to run around for the sake of everyone else is Steph Curry. It's literally the only guy ever that has been willing to do that.
And when you do that, you win MVPs for it, right? So yeah, it's yeah, I mean,
and it also fit his skill set. He's also one of one in that way. It's Ja. If I think defenses in some ways would be excited if Ja was running around off the screens, they'd be great, we can just they'd be stoked.
Well, and look, I mean, the thing is, even aside from whatever he does off the ball, and if he's even comfortable or impactful or how he's deployed in that type of a situation, defenses aren't going to guard him.
No.
So that it's a maze. It's not an easy one to solve, but. Did I convince you? Do we got a championship contender on our hands, or am I ahead of my skis here?
If they were in the East, I could talk myself into it way easier. It's just the West is just such a bloodbath. It's just I don't know, you know what I mean? It's in the West, I feel there's almost a need to be more. If they were in the East, we could have a much more cautious offseason. I would be sure. In the West, I don't know if that gets it done.
I mean, 2022, they are. In the second round, they go to 6 games against the Warriors in a year that Golden State ultimately wins the championship. And in that series, Ja only played 3 of 6 games. That's the last time we really saw them at the peak of their powers. Ja was maybe not quite as good. He was even better the following season. Bane was definitely not as good. They did have Dylan Brooks and a healthy Brandon Clark. Melton was on the team. Kyle Anderson was on the team. But, fill in Brooks for Smart and some of the other moves we've talked about. And if those young guys come along, like, they were right there last time we saw them healthy. And last time they were a real team. So last year, 2023, they imploded. Brooks is barking at LeBron and beefing with the media, and Jaws going off the deep end. So I kind of throw that in the trash. But
yeah, we're getting leaks the day the season ends. It's like, yeah, Dylan's not coming back. Weird times.
Exactly. So, but 2022, like, plus some development and depth and everything. I don't know. I'm just saying we shouldn't overlook them just because they had a weird year.
Just gonna say this again. This is a note on this. The West is gonna be fucking sick next year. Just gonna Brendon, tell me. I'm gonna read off a teams that should have aspirations to be better next year, and you tell me if any one of these teams should not be in the list. Thunder, like, should we stay the same or be better next year? Is how I'll frame it.
Yeah.
Thunder, Nuggets, Wolves, Clippers, Mavs, Suns, Lakers, Pelicans, Kings, Warriors, Rockets, Jazz, Grizzlies, Spurs. Everyone but the Blazers should either want to be the same or make an improvement.
Not sure about the Jazz.
Okay.
I think I could see the Clippers and the Lakers falling off.
But I'm saying they're not going to, their aspirations are not going to, their aspiration going into but I could see them falling off, but I'm saying these teams are going to.
The other thing we have to remember is a lot of the concerns with Memphis are postseason concerns. They're a regular season juggernaut.
Yeah, they're going to be awesome regular season, for sure.
And that goes a long way. I mean, I know we do the whole parity and home court doesn't matter and all these low seeds making the finals, but, like, I'll take being the 1, 2, or 3 seed over not being that.
Also, we've seen how raucous the Memphis playoff crowd can be, and if it's like Pelicans, Grizzlies round 2, that could play a factor.
I think I got you.
I'm in.
I think I convinced you.
I know we already have picked our waving the flag team for next year, but maybe the Grizzlies could be like our extracurricular study team.
I think a lot of people are going to be watching them very closely, so I think they will be a storyline throughout this offseason as we just hit, but also once the games start. I mean, they like you said, a gap year. They're this great team with star players that we talked about all the time for like 4 years who just disappeared off the face of the earth. So I bet in October they will be front and center again. So but we're doing the Spurs. We're doing the Spurs for the West. We just got to find our East team.
Yeah, we just need the Spurs to like draft up. Did we? I thought we settled on the East team, but I could have forgotten that.
Who was it?
That's why I'm wondering. I might have just forgotten.
Oh, okay. If you don't know who it was and I don't remember doing it, I don't think it happened. So we'll pick it after the offseason.
Just let's just see who we can make West really sad about who we picked, because we're not picking the Heat.
We're not picking the Heat or the Cavs. It has to be somebody nobody's talking about. Those are good teams.
They're sure the Cavs are good. I just want to say not the Nets. Can't do the Nets.
We'll see. They're going to be in the mix for a lot of offseason stuff.
You love the Brooklyn Nets. You and Chris.
I do not love the Brooklyn Nets. I love Mikal Bridges, who's on their team, and of course Cam Johnson. But look, if Brooklyn gets somebody, I wouldn't mind doing them.
Okay.
As of now, no. I don't need to watch Cam Thomas chuck 30 shots. With all due respect, that doesn't sound like a great way to spend my time.
That's true. All right, we're gonna end there. NBA Finals continues Monday. WNBA season rolls on, and so do our off-season previews. I'm Chris Manning. That's Brendon Kleen. Back at you next week with more than just basketball show. 3 times a week. Meet Brendon, Wes Goldberg. Enjoy the hoops. Follow us on socials. Use our promo code JustBasketball at BetMGM to get that awesome first bet offer. We'll talk to you then. Enjoy the weekend and enjoy the hoops.